It is 2 a.m. in New York, 11 in Sochi, and 4 on a Thursday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. This is ARIRANG Korea's only global network. South Korea's defense ministry has flatly rejected the North's demand to postpone an upcoming round of military exercises with the U.S. to a date that does not overlap with reunions for families separated by the Korean War. Now, Unification Minister Ryoo Kihl-jae said in an appearance at the National Assembly on Thursday, however, that he still expects the reunions to be held as scheduled. The two Koreas had agreed to proceed with the reunions from the 20th to 25th of this month as planned during marathon 14-hour negotiations that started Wednesday and ended without much agreement. Now, the sticking point during the talks was the military drills, with the North urging Seoul to postpone them to some time after the reunions. Wednesday's inter-Korean talks were the first high-level talks between the two Koreas since the beginning of the Park Geun-hye administration. And earlier today, the South Korean government said Wednesday's talks was an opportunity to clearly explain its principles to the North and to learn a little bit more about Pyongyang's intentions. Presidential spokesperson Min Kyung-wook told reporters that the South Korean delegation explained President Park's envisioned trust-building process with North Korea, as well as her thoughts on inter-Korean relations. Seoul also got to know how sensitive Pyongyang is when it comes to the South's military drills with the U.S. and South Korean media coverage denouncing the North. However, the spokesperson said the agenda did not include resuming tours to the North Mount Kumgang Resort or lifting South Korean sanctions in response to the North torpedo attack on a South Korean warship in 2010. U.S. President Barack Obama will be visiting Seoul in a few weeks' time, following diplomatic efforts by South Korea to be added onto the itinerary. Our Kim Young-gil has the details.
U.S. President Barack Obama has added South Korea to the itinerary for his upcoming trip to Asia. The White House confirmed on Wednesday that the Asia trip is part of Obama's ongoing commitment to increase U.S. diplomatic, economic, and security engagement with countries in the Asia-Pacific region. Although no dates have been released yet, it's reported the president will visit Tokyo first from April 22nd to 23rd, then Seoul from the 23rd to the 24th. During his stay in Seoul, the U.S. president plans to meet with President Park Geun-hye, where they are expected to reaffirm the two sides' alliance, review the security situation on the peninsula, and discuss the Korea-U.S. free trade deal. Now that Seoul is on the itinerary, speculation is rising as to whether President Obama will address the prickly relations between Seoul and Tokyo. A number of disputes over history and territory have chilled relations between the two, especially after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visited a shrine honoring convicted war criminals in December. Obama may, however, choose to stay away from arbitrating the complex historical problems and territorial disputes between the two. North Korea's nuclear program will top the agenda when Park and Obama meet, along with the timing of the transfer of wartime operational control of U.S. forces in South Korea from the U.S. to South Korea. The transfer date was originally slated for next year, but South Korea has been pushing for a delay. April will also be a critical time for trade negotiations. Obama is expected to try to push to tie the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Pact that includes 12 nations, as Korean participation in the partnership could further cement a future trading order in Asia that would include North America. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry arrived in Seoul about an hour ago on the first stop of his fifth trip to Asia since becoming Washington's chief diplomat. During his two-day visit, Kerry will meet with his South Korean counterpart Yoon Byung-se, where the two diplomats are expected to reaffirm the strength of the South Korea-U.S. alliance, discuss ways to expand cooperation on regional and global issues, and continue close coordination to promote North Korea's denuclearization. However, also topping the agenda will be Wednesday's high-level meeting between South and North Korean officials, which ended without much progress. Now, the U.S. Foreign Affairs chief is also expected to pay a courtesy call to President Park Geun-hye on this Thursday.
With rapid changes in the global economy, up-to-date business and financial news has never been more essential. See what's making markets tick around the globe. We speak to the experts and cover the biggest financial stories.
North Korea provocation.
Quite good. We received a lot of positive feedback, especially from those abroad.
In an effort to reduce private tutoring and make students focus more on school classes, the Korean government will force universities to give a 0 mark to applications that include awards or certificates received outside of school. Now, these will include TOEFL scores, math and science Olympiad awards, and extracurricular education prizes received at private institutions. Now, in its status report to the president, the Education Ministry also announced plans to lower the importance of English language test scores in the nation's college entrance exams. President Park emphasized the need to devise fundamental measures to reduce the excessive pursuit of English language education. The country's financial regulator vowed to upgrade the data protection system as Korea reels from the shock of the largest ever personal data leak in its history. During a meeting at the National Assembly Thursday, Financial Services Commission Chair Shin Jae-yoon reiterated the importance of protecting client data and vowed to improve the nation's data security structure in order to regain the public trust. He also offered an apology for the leak. He added that the previously proposed 3-month suspension of businesses at the 3 card firms where the leak occurred will begin as early as Friday. The Bank of Korea has left its key interest rate unchanged at 2.5% for the 9th straight month in February. Following its monthly monetary policy meeting Thursday, the central bank said it expects the local and global economy to stay on a path to moderate recovery. The central bank, however, took note of the financial instability in emerging economies stemming from the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision to scale back its monthly bond buying stimulus program. The nation's inflation rate ran below the central bank's target band for the 20th straight month in January, standing at 1.1%. And looking at the market, Seoul shares snapped a 6-day winning streak on Thursday as offshore investors repositioned as net sellers, while program selling on options expiry day added pressure. Now, at the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi finished down 0.5% at 1927, ending the 6-session gain of 2.6% that brought the market to a position not seen since January 29th on Wednesday. The tech-heavy Kosdaq gained 0.2%, while on the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency closed weaker against the greenback at 1,066 won. One of the biggest and most recognizable tech companies in the world is gearing up to make a huge investment in Korea. Microsoft says it plans to build a massive $9 billion data center somewhere in the country, but it hasn't yet decided on a location. Yoo Li-an reports.
Microsoft's plans to build a data center in Korea would make it by far the largest investment ever made in Korea by a global technology firm. Microsoft Korea said on Wednesday that its head office will build a data center on 330,000 square meters of land. While the exact amount is yet to be decided, Microsoft is looking to invest over 10 trillion won, or roughly $9.4 billion into the project. Considering the scale of the project and the investment, Microsoft's data center could be the largest of its kind in all of Asia. It will be twice as big as the data center Google says it plans to build in Taiwan. The data center will also serve as a facility to provide a backup service for data flowing in from Asia and other parts of the world. A delegation from Microsoft has reportedly already visited Korea to look at possible sites, with the southernmost port city of Busan rising as a strong candidate. Microsoft is believed to have chosen Korea for its data center as the country holds excellent maintenance and repair manpower, is less prone to natural disasters, and has cheap electricity. Yoo Li-an, ARIRANG News.
There have been reports that the Korean government plans to include measures aimed at enhancing labor market flexibility in its 3-year economic innovation plan, which will be unveiled sometime this month. The plan is President Park Geun-hye's initiative and focuses on revamping public organizations, streamlining regulations, and nurturing promising industries in the service sector. And the details of that plan are also expected to be made public later this month. For a more in-depth look into this issue, we are joined live in the studio by Dr. Kim Byung-ju, the head of KLMP Consulting and our regular commentator on this program. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Kim.
Good afternoon.
So this making promotion of labor market flexibility part of its reform agenda, what is the story there?
Well, basically, we remember, quite a while ago, I think it was last month when President had her first press conference ever, and there she laid out different kind of policy agendas that she will be pushing forward. And one of the key things was reforming of the economy. And she also talked about the, normalizing the abnormalities of the society as a whole. And combining those two, right now the government itself is preparing those details about this 3-year plan. And there, as an important part of it was normalizing so-called the abnormalities of the economy. And along with that, of course, there will be some different policy initiatives about the creative economy as well as encouraging or boosting the domestic demand as well. But for the first part, so-called normalizing the abnormalities of the economy, the key agenda, reports are saying, will be doing something about the labor market itself, actually trying to provide or generate greater flexibility in the labor market, as well as along with the greater stability. And the government is working on that. And basically what the notion says is that, while there is a polarization going on in the economy as a whole, which creates a greater necessity for the stability for the labor market, at the same time, in order to seek greater stability, we got to make the labor market more flexible. It's a complicated idea. It sounds like a complicated idea, but we can talk about more details.
Right. I mean, this labor market flexibility, the concept, could you try to explain to us what this concept is in simple manner?
Yeah, let's get to the core, parts of the concept itself. By saying making the labor market more flexible, the government is talking about relaxing the job protection that unionized workers in Korea are enjoying at this point, number one. Number two is also relaxing overall wage stickiness. In Korea, well, elsewhere around the world often, what we see is wages tend to go up and continue to go up. And it's very difficult to reduce wage downwards because of the labor contracts and so on. So addressing the job protection itself and then wage stickiness, those are the key ideas about making the labor market flexible as a whole. And this is very important here because the Park government has been trying to introduce various kinds of innovations in the labor market in order to increase jobs. One of the key goals for the government itself is job creation, raising the employment ratio up to 70% from the current level of about 65%. So for that, they have been introducing ideas about how to encourage female labor participants to join the market more, and then allowing the companies and the workers to work based on more of the time basis rather than full-time basis, as well as encouraging the companies to hire more of the high school graduates, and also introducing more flexible hour system. And together with, actually, the court has recently ruled on the base wage issue as well, right? Expanding the boundary of them. And so that's a challenge added on to the initiatives here. And so these are very important initiatives. In order to make these initiatives work, actually, it's absolutely critical to introduce more flexibility in terms of the labor market in those two ideas that I just talked about.
Now, Korea has long been known for its lack of labor market flexibility. Right. Now, would it be correct or safe to say that this owes a lot to the nation's modern history? Oh,
absolutely, absolutely. There's no question about that. I mean, as we remember during the, for instance, 60s and 70s, of course, Korea's modernization drive began at the beginning of the 60s, and during the 60s and 70s, indeed, a Korean economy relied upon labor-intensive manufacturing of light goods. And at that time, of course, we do know that laborers or workers have sacrificed big time in terms of under the cause of building the nation's economy as a whole. But the thing is, as soon as the 1980s began, there were democratization movement, and at the end of that, workers in Korea realized that it's time for them to, ask for their own shares and asking for stop of old practice of workers sacrificing for the cause of building national economy. So since then, what happened was since the end of 1980s, labor movement, as many of us well know here in Korea, as well as outside Korea know, labor movement has become very strong here in Korea. And there's a perception that Korean labor union has become very strong, especially in the large corporate sector, large size companies. There are strong labor unions, and because of their presence, the wage rate has been going up continuously, and the job protection for those labor organized workers have become very strong. So indeed, this current situation has owed a lot to the overall historical development.
Now, what are the consequences of this kind of inflexibility in the labor market? Would you say that it's Korea's economic competitiveness being compromised?
I have to agree with that notion here, because now, as a reality, current reality, we know that Korean companies can no longer compete against other foreign or international competitors based upon the lower labor cost. That's a given fact here as a result of this historical development that I talked about so far. That's number one. Number two is with regard to the foreign investors, there is a growing recognition here that here and around the world that Korea is no longer very attractive in terms of labor market conditions. I've heard a lot from some of the foreign executives saying having this kind of wage negotiation, for instance, every year is outrageous in their perspective. They have labor negotiations starting from the spring and then continues on until like a late fall. And as soon as New Year begin, they have to get into another round of labor negotiations. And foreign executives find it outrageous nonsense. So that's a perception outside. And also, the foreign businesses here in Korea have great trouble in terms of adjusting their labor force here because of the job protection going on. So it's a huge challenge that Korea faces. And not to mention even the fact, the phenomena here where Korea's leading businesses such as Samsung Electronics and Hyundai Motors, they have moved outside and their protections, and they're producing more cars and more semiconductors overseas.
Now, some experts have said that this will be one of the toughest reforms Korea will ever try to, carry out. Does that mean there are a lot of tough challenges ahead for this country?
Absolutely. The items in terms of the key items of action that requires policy action, the list is too long here. For instance, let me give you just a few examples. For the extending the retirement age up to age 60, it's critical. It seems to be critical to have the wage peak system here in Korea, but that will face great resistance from the labor union. But that will be a critical step to introduce greater flexibility. And in terms of a base wage issue here, after the court ruling, we have a list of issues where the labor on one hand and then the management on the other will have to agree on. That will be a long, prolonged process through which, if successful, labor market flexibility will be introduced. And, introducing more different kind of systems to allow greater female work participation in the market, and introducing more of the part-time work system. For those, also labor unions agreements are very critically needed. And that's another front where there will be great conflict between management on one hand and the labor union on the other, and perhaps government on the side as a third party here. So the way I see it, this is a very tough fight or tough process through which this reform will be introduced. Today, after the government announcement or after the reports about the government plan, one example, DUP, Democratic United Party, they issued a statement, and they're saying, well, government is going to try to victimize workers. That's a knee-jerk reaction that we see in politics. And we know with such a political reaction, the overall process ahead will be only very difficult.
Right, and it definitely sounds like each component of this reform agenda will require a lot of effort and a lot of time in order to be successfully carried out. And that, however, all of this seem critical for the Korean economy to advance advance economy.
Right, so we need greater efforts for creating social consensus.
All right, Dr. Kim Byung-ju, thank you so much for today. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay.
And moving over to our Sochi coverage, it was another day of surprises and disappointments for athletes competing in the Olympic Games on Wednesday, but full of Olympic spirit nonetheless. For a wrap-up of Day 5 of medal events and what to look forward to on Day 6, let's now turn to our Lee Tae-ho.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today, we'll go ahead and kick off today's coverage of the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics with a look at the results from the men's 1,000-meter speed skating event. Now, we continue to see the disappointing results from the favorites at the Games, with the heavy favorite in this event, American Shani Davis, placing a disappointing 8th. Korea's own Mo Tae-bum, who was another medal favorite, also failed to reach the podium, placing 12th. Meanwhile, the Dutch national team continues its strong showings on the ice, with Stefan Gruthers taking the gold, Danny Morrison of Canada claiming the silver, and the 500-meter gold medalist Michael Mulder from the Netherlands taking the bronze. Now moving on to the results of one of Korea's newer winter sports, curling. Coming into the round-robin session far from the favorites, the women's national curling team fell to the number 4 team in the world, Switzerland, by a score of 6-8 during their round-robin session 4 at the Games. They were on the ice again later in the day to face the number 1 Swedish team, only to fall once again by the score of 4-7, with talks of changing skipper Kim Ji-sun as they prepare to face off against the home team Russia in their round-robin session number 6. And while the women's figure skating competition is still a week away, all eyes have turned onto the central figures with the queen, Korea's own Kim Yuna, officially touching down at Sochi. She arrived to a multitude of reporters from all over the world anxiously awaiting her arrival. She told the media that she would try her best for her final Olympic Games before heading out to her hotel, where she will be staying for the duration of the Sochi Winter Games. Now, the big headlines heading into the highly anticipated women's individual figure skating competition is the rivalry between the queen, Kim Yuna, and Russia's 15-year-old sweetheart, Yulia Lipnitskaya. Now, for all of you wondering what events Korean athletes will be participating in on Day 6 of the Winter Games, here are a few great competitions to look forward to. First off, the 500-meter women's short track event will feature 3 of Korea's stars, Shim Seok-ki, Park Geun-hye, and Kim Ah-rang. Also in action tonight will be the 500-meter speed skating gold medalist Lee Sang-hwa for the 1,000-meter speed skating competition. Now let's take a look at a full list of tonight's events and also the medal standings. I was Lee Tae-ho, and I'll be back again tomorrow with all of the latest from Sochi 2014.
So we are approaching the midway point of the Sochi Winter Olympics, and hundreds of millions of people around the world are tuning in to watch the games on TV or online. Well, to make it even easier for Korean fans, local tech firms have developed smartphone apps so fans can be up to date on all the latest results anytime, anywhere. Polly reports.
Whether it's catching a glimpse of figure skating star Kim Yuna or speed skating legend Lee Sang-hwa, watching Team Korea compete on the ice is a must-see experience for fans here at home and abroad. To ensure fans never miss a single Olympic event, local web portal firms have released their own mobile applications to celebrate the Winter Games. Designed for smartphones and tablet PCs, the special apps offer video on demand and real-time streaming services of the races and events. Many users say the services are convenient to use whenever or wherever they want to catch up on the latest highlights.
Even though the events I'm interested in take place at night, I'm still able to watch them on my mobile. I also leave supportive comments and view information on the athletes.
Korea's internet-based television or IPTV industry has also jumped on board. The mobile IPTV apps are now available to give users unlimited access to the high-definition broadcasts of the games.
At the Sochi Olympics and other national events, it's important for Koreans to collectively cheer on and support our national athletes. That's why we're offering data and content usage relating to the Sochi Olympics free of charge.
With the proliferation of smartphones, it's never been easier to watch your favorite athletes take on the world and hopefully rise to the top of the podium. Paul Yi, ARIRANG News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast, but stay tuned to ARIRANG. We have a lot more coming your way on Early Edition at 6.